let's proceed. So I'm going to open the meeting at 6 p.m. And then read some boilerplate here. Where is it? Okay, I've called the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. This meeting is being recorded by the Economic Development Committee. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. Seeing none. Now, without objection, I'm going to skip the part about calling a constable or other officer since it's a Zoom meeting. If that's okay, I'll go on to the roll call. Any objections?
They're going to have to chase me.
All right. So the roll call, I'll go right to the roll call. I'm Councilor Elmer, I'm here. Councilor Bottomley,
Here.
shout out. Councilor Gilmore.
Here.
I saw her, she's here. Yep. Councilor Healy, is you here yet? No, he's absent right now. I'll let you know if he comes in. And Councilor Mayo.
Here. Here.
Okay, good. No public hearings, no motions, just some discussion. And I guess our guest hasn't shown up. So did anybody else look closely at the potential sale of city-owned land? It's on page, oh wait, should we do the minutes first? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, approval of minutes. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Mayo, and then seconded by Gilmore. All in favor, just say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passed unanimously. Okay, no public hearings, no motions, just discussion. And so getting back to that city-owned land, if you scroll down your packet, it starts on page 7, after page 7. This is coming from the planning department. We're on a list of people that are looking at this. We're not being asked to vote on it. So what we're just reviewing it and seeing if we have any questions. If anybody have any questions, if not, I'll just ask my own. Hearing none. If you look at, they're not numbered, but if you scroll down, you'll find a computer drawn page numbered 1, drive diagram, revised proposed.
Is it the one that's highlighted in yellow? There's a diagram that's highlighted in yellow.
Yes, the yellow highlight. Why didn't I see that? Well, that answers my question. That's the sliver of land that the town owns and the developer wants to buy. He's not here to explain it, but I suspect it has to do with more parking for the development he's planning, which is residential housing, a commercial. Oh, I've got some people trying to get in. Councilor Healy has arrived at 6:04, and MJ Adams is here too. So we don't have the developer to catch Derek and MJ up. We've approved the minutes. We've done the roll call. And now we're looking at the proposed, oh, here's Stephanie Duclos, the public. Hello, Stephanie. To catch you all up, we started 5 minutes ago. We're now looking at the proposed sale of land, which is in the packet. Let me scroll down back to it. Where was it? And it's a sliver of land that I before I knew it was a sliver, I thought the price seemed really cheap, but I was informed by the planning director that it's a fraction of the land that's encircled, and they, they just did a calculation, and that's why they're talking about I think 2,700. Again, we're being told about this. We're not being asked to vote on anything. Anybody have any questions?
I do.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to bounce between that diagram with the yellow highlights, and then there's like an aerial photo right afterwards.
Yeah.
So what's the part that's actually being sold?
My understanding, you see the gray kind of driveway around the pink line.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a sort of a widening of that driveway.
So you're talking about the one, it kind of forms like the letter P, sort of tilted a little bit to the left, right? So if Montague Center Road is the, the spine of the letter P, and then there's that curve that comes out.
Let's see.
Is that what you're talking about?
What picture are you looking at?
So I'm looking at that aerial photo,
Okay.
and you can see Montague City Road is labeled. And then there's
Right.
kind of like, I'm picturing it like it's the letter P right there. And then there's the baseball diamond just
Yeah.
outside of it. So it's just that area right there.
No, it's smaller than that. If you scroll past the GIS page and get down to one that shows a green area with a it's labeled number 1 drive diagram.
Okay.
This is the yellow highlighting that I thought Doug was talking about. You see the arrow, 4,850 square feet sliver off excess land. You see that?
Yeah, that's not very wide.
It's a, yeah.
Like a
Okay, so then
footpath.
there's an arrow. There's an arrow pointing to something that's between dotted lines, but it's highlighted in yellow. That is the land that we're talking about.
I see.
City owned. They want to sell it for a couple $1,000 to the developer who's got plans for this area. I was hoping he would come tonight and tell us what his plans are, but you can see some of it's labeled residential housing, 13 units, commercial building, 4,400 square feet, and a 1-family house. I think that 1-family house is not part of his property. Anyway, any other questions about it? I mean,
This doesn't look like it's to scale. Do we know how wide that is?
Yeah, I think it is marked in the next diagram. Let me see if I can enlarge it on my screen.
Maybe that's my problem.
There's a 30, it's measured at 30 odd feet, I guess, at sort of the fat part of the paved drive. It may need a high resolution screen to make sense of this. And then there's a photograph of, on the ground level, of some vertical white barriers.
Oh, yes,
Yeah, I'm not, this doesn't represent it very well, but I get the sense that the strip is right there.
see that. Almost looks like a cemetery.
Yeah, yeah. This is the old location of the Center School. They've moved into a new place. Very nice. What's weird about this property is it's across the street from a wreckage, a car wrecking operation. I think that was one of the reasons the Center School wanted to move. Anyway, I don't want to belabor this. Any other questions about it? I think it may come back to us for a vote if it came. I think we could send this straight to City Council for a vote, unless there's other questions. Okay.
So I don't I
Yep.
just have one question. You said we're not voting on it, we're just discussing it.
Yeah, yeah.
So would we send it to city council if we're just discussing it?
We wouldn't know, I think, not without a actual motion.
Okay,
I mean, we could make a motion and approve it, but it seems a little out of order since it hasn't been to the planning board yet. There's all these other people that have to see it. Sheila, give me some advice here. Have you seen this kind of thing?
I
we-
have.
Yeah.
My first year on city council, so I was saying this earlier before everyone was on. My first year on city council, I was on economic development, and I feel like so much of it went over my head because I didn't know all of the jargon. And I wasn't familiar with all of the, the workings of city government. And I told Dan when we were choosing subcommittee meetings, because I know, like, I had to put people on subcommittees last year, and it was tough to sort of fit that puzzle together. So I told him, just put me wherever you want me, and I will do my work. So he put me here, and I told him I was excited about it because now I get to sort of dig in and see what I missed the first time around. Now that I actually know what some of these things mean. And when I was there the first time, we had sold a little place. It was this little almost path that was right along someone's yard, and they wanted to buy it from the city just to sort of have a slightly larger yard. And it was not at all, contentious. It was just, it seems like a normal thing, but that it was fascinating because I thought, why would there be these like little plots of like 8 foot by 30 feet patches of lands that are just owned by the town that aren't being used for anything? It seemed kind of silly, but I guess that's why we're here, right?
Yeah, if I going back to the language up above, it's asking us to review the attached material and submit written comments to the Department of Planning and Development by Wednesday, March 1st. The recommendation shall indicate if the property is needed for any city purpose, if any special conditions should be attached to the sale, and any additional information which may be appropriate and useful for a determination. I'm happy to send those written comments to the planning department and say that we didn't have any objection. You want to vote on that?
I would make that motion.
I second that.
All right, all in favor, or any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, I'll send a little note to Eric. Good.
Thank you.
Then moving on, the next thing is a discussion about parking and what does it say on? Anyway, it's parking and a bike lane. And I was going to take this opportunity to bring you guys up to speed because I don't know if any of you have gone to them, but I've gone to every meeting. MJ has had several. Hi, MJ. And finally, the bike lane issue came up at the last one. I think it was last Thursday. And correct me if I'm wrong, MJ, but basically the story is we spent a couple of $100,000 to get things rolling, to get a grant from the Department of Transportation, the state, to spend $7 or $8 million redoing Main Street. Have I got those numbers roughly right, MJ?
It's not a grant. It's actually, yes, you have the numbers more or less right, but it's not a grant. It's actually puts the project on the Mass DOT Transportation Improvement Program, and they manage the construction.
Right. So basically, the state's going to redo Main Street for free. And it's not for free. It's our tax money coming back to Greenfield. And the agenda of the last meeting made it pretty clear that there are 3 things DOT is interested in, primarily about safety. They had there's one track about vehicle drivers and roadway configuration, another track on pedestrians and walking connections, and a third track on cyclists and bike facilities. And again, I'm going to try to summarize this. They looked at Main Street. To my surprise, more than 10,000 cars go through Main Street every day, which qualifies it for some level DOT interest. And when they looked at what we have, there's a lot of things that are what they call not best practice. One of them is angle parking, which they can show you science, I assume, that says it's more dangerous, especially for bicyclists, because you don't see anybody coming until you get most of the way into the middle of the street. Same with cars coming up. So, and the other thing is, it's not on the same line, it's not safe for bicyclists, and best practices is to have a clearly marked bike lane where cars aren't supposed to drive. And you can't do that on Main Street and much of Main Street without getting rid of the angle parking. So if we want this money, if we want them to fix up Main Street, we're going to have to come up with some, there are the people that are guiding us are going to come up with a plan that gets rid of the angle parking and puts in a bike lane, probably between the cars and the sidewalk. They had lots of pictures of what this looks like. They also, had a lot of ideas about how to make it safer for pedestrians, clearly marked, different color, bright lines for crossing, maybe some blinking lights when people are crossing. They're going to look at where people cross and how they can make it less dangerous. And there was this eerie chart that showed where the most accidents happened on Main Street. These dark circles that was sort of saying, you're having more than your share of accidents in this area. MJ, have I done a fair job of summarizing that?
Very good, very good. The one thing I will mention though is that the city also did a complete streets prioritization process over the last couple of years. Eric Torg led that up, and this work comes directly out of that also. So there is this effort to make streets, complete streets, available for vehicles, bicyclists, pedestrians, and others, and that this is part of that. And planning work that was happening back, I think in 2017 is when the city actually did the complete streets program. And the one thing I will add also,
yes,
the one thing I will add also is that we have been aware of concerns about the parking supply and demand, and I hope you're all aware that we're in the middle of doing a parking management study that will take a look at what our supply and demand is right now, look at the things that are happening in the downtown corridor that will influence that or affect that, and come out with some recommendations, because we are well aware of the importance of parking real estate for the downtown business community.
I would say that is the number one concern that I've heard regarding this particular topic is parking, and the amount of parking that will disappear. Well, I mean, there's more to say on this. We're that in the beginning stages of it, but from what people have what's been led out to the public is some very concerning stuff. Is that they're losing spaces that is best used in the way that it is now. But I'd be interested in hearing more about the development of other parking. It's hard to kind of it's kind of hard to argue if I don't know all the facts. So I'm open to hearing those facts.
Sheila had her hand up. Let's let Sheila go.
Actually, it's a related question, so you might get off easy, MJ. I wanted to know exactly how many parking spaces would we lose just by implementing the parallel parking instead of diagonal parking. I know there's going to be a study also.
Right. I don't know the exact number, Sheila. What I understand is along the Main Street corridor, just on Main Street directly, that converting from angle to parallel parking, you essentially lose 30% of the parking spaces. That said, one of the things that we're looking at is how we're using our existing parking. And we're actually going to be out there in early May doing some counting in terms of how parking spaces are being used and really use it on data and take a look at the full inventory that we have of parking resources available to the downtown community and to figure out how to manage them better. I mean, one of the things that the consultants say is that frequently you have enough spaces, it's how you manage them effectively that causes it to work better for the community. So that's what we're looking to learn.
And
Doug, Councillor Healy's got his hand up.
okay, gotcha.
Go ahead, Derek.
Thank you. So, my biggest concern with losing parking on Main Street, one is the elderly and the senior citizens that are handicapped, not having close proximity parking to the store they want to visit or those things. Going to the parking garage or going to a lot behind a building and having to walk to Main Street for them is not probable. And because I worked for the DOT for so many years, I can tell you an angle parking spot's about 8 feet wide. As a parallel parking spot is 18, so it'd be closer to 50% loss in parking along Main Street just by going from parallel from angle, because you're, like I said, an angled spot is 8 feet, a parallel spot is not 18 feet long, right? So you're essentially turning those things. So that's just my previous experience speaking. Not that I'm against it. I think bicycle lanes and everything is great, but definitely like to see the parking study and that information before we move forward with anything.
Back to Doug, and then we'll get back to you, MJ.
Thank you. I just again, I was going to hop on what Councilor Healy just said. Is with this include the parking garage as part of the city's thought about a proper use of parking, because Councilor Healy brought up a good point of the elderly and the handicapped, and it not being very convenient for them. And being on the disability committee in town, I can tell you that there is a big concern about sidewalks already. And if we talk about parking, that's really putting a detriment to the elderly and the handicapped. Thank you.
MJ, you've got the floor.
Yes, the parking garage is included in the parking management study that we're doing. So we will have those resources. And yes, we're well aware that, we have to be very mindful because Greenfield actually has a higher than average elderly population and a higher than average population with mobility impairment. So we know that that is a high concern, and we've shared that with the engineers who are doing the work. I think in terms of time frame, in terms of what happens, and if I'm missing an answer to one of your questions, ask it again, is that we'll be doing the data collection in May. And I know that there's the plan to have another workshop in June when we have some real data on the inventory. We more or less have the current inventory, but our parking engineers are taking a look at the expected impact of the changes that are happening in downtown and how that might affect the demand.
Thank you.
I will add, if I could, and I'll get back to you, Sheila, that I left out that, one of the 3 tracks in the meeting on Thursday was pedestrian safety. And there seemed to be great concern about people in wheelchairs, the handicapped, the disabled, in terms of making it clearer where the parking was, making it easier to get from where the parking is to downtown, making it safer, putting islands in the middle of Main Street so that you can get halfway across and pause and then look at where you are. So I think in terms of disability, they should be speaking to the disability committee, because I think they have a lot to say about what they had planned for it. I know just one, I know I've talked to some store owners and, bakers and the bakery. They feel like the parking, I think there are 9 spaces in that block on Main Street, and they feel like that's, they sort of own them, and that their business is dependent on people being able to, slip in, buy a bagel and slip out. So, you could see that there was going to be resistance, and I don't know. Maybe MJ, what the process is. Does this come to the city council for a vote at some point?
I don't know. This is a Main Street improvement program. It's actually Marlowe's project.
Who's
It's Marlowe's project. So am I frozen?
You were for a moment, yes.
Okay, it's Marlowe's project, so I'm gonna actually defer to my colleague, and if you have specific questions about process, I'm gonna let Marlowe be the one to answer those, and if you want to just do a quick summary of what those might be. But I think I understood that you wanted to know the time frame and the process for the project to move forward once we complete the engineering work, which is called 25% design, which is actually close to not 100% design decision.
I think our host just left.
Uh-oh.
Councilor Healy's
And-
host.
Oh, yeah, and my video keeps flipping off even though I'm not touching it, so I don't know what's going on tonight.
So were folks able to hear my response?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, so I'm deferring
might
to
have to-
Marlo.
Yeah, you might have to wait for Phil though, because he was the one who answered he was the one who asked the question. But I'm sure he's gonna reconnect. But Derek, why don't you go? And then I had a question, and then when Phil gets back.
Counselor Bottomley hasn't had a chance to
Oh,
speak
I'm
yet,
sorry,
right?
it was John, I'm sorry.
This is just a quick one. On the parking study, is it gonna include things like the length of time a meter might have, like whether it's short term or long term?
Yes.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the parking study too, because we've got the parking garage, which is underutilized, and there's like the way people, will interpret statistics can, vary quite a bit. So I would be concerned that, somebody would say that, oh, we have lots of parking because of that parking garage, which, yeah, I mean, the top floors never fill up, except it's not really a convenient location, like Derek had mentioned earlier about, how if you have a disability, or if you're, an elderly person, wants to go to, it'd be fine if they wanted to go somewhere like Hawks and Reed in that area, but if they wanted to go further down Main Street, that's a bit of a hike. So
Sure.
there's like this quality versus quantity issue that I'm thinking of. And I don't know, can you describe what a parking study would look like, or has the study not been designed yet?
The idea is to take a look at our existing parking resources and to measure the demand at different points through the day. Quite honestly, they're going to be doing a study where they're actually counting how long cars are staying in certain spaces, how quick the turnover is. And the question is how we're managing that. So for example, if you have like the block between Bakers and Arise is a great a great study, because those are quick turnovers. You would expect to see quick turnovers, but if the meters in front there are for 2 hours, might it make sense to make those different time limits, maybe 30-minute or 15-minute spots? If that's the type of demand that's in that little block, does that make more sense? So the idea is to take a look at the existing inventory, the existing demand for parking spaces, and then also to figure out how we're managing those spaces to best meet the demand as it presents itself. And then the other unknown we have to mix in is a couple things. First, what's the impact of the Wilson's redevelopment? What's the impact of changing over from angle to parallel parking on Main Street? And then the other question that's going to be discussed in that parking management study is what is the need for Hope Street lot to return to parking resources as opposed to some other uses that the community has suggested we might look at for that site?
I see, I'm sorry, I got bumped off there for a while. I see Doug and Derek's hands up. Who was there first?
Derek.
Okay. Derek, you've got the floor.
Yeah, I was just thinking about a similar project that Deerfield did, right? So a lesson learned from that project is let's make sure we get our fire, life safety, like fire and police involved in the redesign to make sure that they don't have any access restrictions on Main Street. Because as you know, 5 and 10, they put in all those median curbs, nice granite curbing. And then the fire trucks were like, well, we can't get by if there's an emergency. So they ripped them all out. So we should probably make sure there's some sort of involvement from public safety.
And
So noted.
Doug?
Now that we've discussed a little bit about what the study may be, what the makeup of the study is, it really concerns me about, we talked about, studying, who might be going into Barrett and Baker or Bakers and who might be going into the bakery. But we didn't talk about, is there a specific plan to study handicapped, where they go and where they travel and how long it takes them to go into stores? And because I see a lot of wheelchairs up and down Main Street, not necessarily, so I'm concerned about having them into the study in terms of use of Main Street stores and the time that they're using the stores. A wheelchair, they may be, if it's a manual wheelchair, it's different than a mechanical wheelchair and how fast it can go. Or somebody with a walker or some other handicap device.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that at the handicap marked spaces, there's no time limit. And my understanding is that if you have a handicap placard, you are not paying at regular parking spaces anyway. You're allowed to park anywhere.
That's correct.
So there's no infringement on if they need extra time, they're not in any way impacted by time limitations on meters.
I'm talking about somebody with a specific, sorry, if I may follow up.
Sure.
I'm talking about specifically wheelchairs. They don't come with most of them don't come with a, they don't come with a vehicle. They use their mechanical wheelchair or their electric wheelchair and come from, let's say, the Wells Street Apartments, Millhouse, and they use their wheelchair to get to Main Street from there. They're not using a vehicle, but they should be counted in terms of where they go and how long they're in a particular store. That's my concern, and that doesn't seem to be in the mix so far.
We are not measuring the behavior of people and what stores they go into and how long they're in each store. What we're measuring is the time that they're in occupying a parking space in the different locations.
Could I interject an idea? What about making most of the spaces on Main Street handicap?
That's actually been suggested. That's actually been at the workshop. We asked over the last couple of workshops we've done. We've asked for people for comments and suggestions, And for the parking one, we were willing to take any that were there. And, you know, anything is on the table in terms of how we decide to use our parking resources in downtown.
When would this happen, MJ?
The parking data collection is actually going to happen, I think, the second week of May.
I was
And
thinking,
then,
you told
and
us
then
that. I
the-
was thinking the like when the street might get redone.
oh, at the moment, the street is scheduled for fiscal year 27 on the Mass DOT tip. So
Okay.
that means the fall of 2026 and the summer of 2027.
And I assume that there's going to be more meetings and more invitations for public input. Yeah, I think it behooves all of us to go to these things. There's a train headed down the tracks, and if you want some say in which way it goes, you ought to go to these things. I found them very useful, interesting, and well run. Okay. Any other, again, we don't have anything to vote on here. But I could sense this conversation brewing. And since there's been some hearings or discussions about it, meetings about it, I wanted to put it on the table. I think we are going to see it again, MJ. Will it come to the council at some point? In what form would it come?
I think this is when you went offline before. In terms of the time frame for that, I'm deferring to Marlo because it's his department's project, and I'm not at liberty to really talk about the process that he takes it through to the city. But I will send him an email this evening and say that your committee's interested in finding out that.
Yeah, I think he knows.
Yeah.
I've been hearing about this a lot because most of the stuff that's getting planned, we hear about it in the Sustainable Greenfield Implementation Committee, which MJ and Marlo are both on, and they tell us about these things ahead of time. Anyway, anything else to be said about this? I think we've given MJ some useful feedback. That's it for our agenda. I think the next thing was new business. Let me see if I can get my screen up here. Oh my gosh. I'm going to do this from memory. I believe there was we've opened the floor for new business. Any new business? Any old business? But I've got a piece of old business I'd like to talk about. We scheduled a tour of a couple of factories in the industrial park that might be interested in moving into the potentially rezoned French King Highway. Councilor Healy and I were the only two who took it. It was really interesting. I had to take back anything I said about Valley Steel Stamp not being a gun manufacturer. Most of what they're doing is making parts for pistols, and that's clearly their growth industry. But this is not about Valley Steel Stamp. That's why I wanted to include Beat Fog Nozzle. We have an invitation for what used to be called SWM and has a new name. They'd be happy to tour us. Anybody who's interested in seeing what light industry looks like in Greenfield, let me know. These people are eager to show us their operations, eager to talk about their plans. We learned that Valley Steel Stamp is talking about buying a company in Connecticut where they have lots of land for industrial development, and they could very well end up going there. They would like to be in Greenfield. As I say, this doesn't hang on Valley Steel Stamp. Also, I can tell you, share with you that the mayor has a new proposal. She hasn't made it public yet, but she's going to send it to the planning board, and the schedule, what she wants, I think now, is a broader discussion with all the stakeholders where city councilors show up and hear the pros and cons. So I think the plan is she's going to propose something. The planning board's going to talk about it themselves at their first March meeting. At their second March meeting, I didn't realize they meet twice a month. they're going to have a discussion, not a public hearing, but a discussion to which all the city councilors will be invited. And, you know, if you want more housing somewhere, let's look at what the ordinance says about what's allowed in these places. If you want to change it, really, it's within the city council's power to alter the ordinances that cover what's done in these properties. So this hasn't gone away. It's going to come back. It's out of the council's hands because it got voted down, but it's going to start again with the planning board and eventually with another public hearing if it gets that far, and it will probably come back to the city council. All right, that's all I had to say about that. Just to remind you, this is the Economic Development Committee. We're supposed to be thinking about what's good for the economic development of Greenfield, and what I don't want to say any more. Okay, any other old business? When is the next meeting? I don't have that in front of me.
March 14th.
That's good. The next meeting is scheduled for March 14th via still the Zoom conferencing system unless otherwise posted. There's talk about moving these things to City Hall, but not yet, I guess. I would hear a motion for adjournment.
Motion to
So
adjourn.
moved. Second.
Excellent. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, I'm going to close this meeting at 6:42. Thank you all very much.